So we bring in Salena Zito. She has got a op-ed in the Washington Post where she has been spending time with Midwestern workers. Salena, I'm curious what you're hearing from people in the Midwest, an area that used to be the manufacturing hub of America that has certainly dried up in many different ways. JD Vance, that's been a huge part of his political career, is talking about the jobs that no longer exist in the Midwest. What are you hearing from voters in the Midwest? How do you think this tariff war plays for them? And how would you assess the politics of what's going on right now?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I cover a different world, very different than, sort of the very online world. And where I'm at in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, the heart of the Great Lakes, Midwest, and Appalachia, these people here are very happy with the tariffs. They have spent the past 40 years, whether it was themselves or their parents or their grandparents, watching these communities, these churches, the tax base in their communities being decimated. And nobody even wrote a story. I mean, I'm obviously being a little exaggerating here, but there wasn't this big, overt worry about their lives, right? When all their jobs were lost, when everything was taken away from them. And so they look at it two ways. They look at it as being patriotic, bringing back American manufacturing, sacrificing in their 401k for the betterment of the country. But they also look at it as leveling the playing field. And it's not just manufacturing. Talk to a rancher. They're happy, right? Talk to a manufacturer, a small businessman like Tyler Merritt down in Savannah, Georgia, the guy who owns Nine Line. He's thrilled. These guys are thrilled, and these are the people that placed Donald Trump into office. It was the working class that was at the heart of this election.
What'd you learn, Salena, specifically from, and thanks for being here with us,
Thanks.
when you went to in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, a
Yeah.
steel mill, and you talked to the folks at the mill? I mean, just what were your biggest takeaways, both from seeing that operation? I think very few people who don't work in a steel mill have ever really been inside one, and also their sense of what would they say to people who claim, well, but we can never make steel the way they do as cheaply as they do in China, so why even try?
Right. So if people go and check my Twitter feed out, Zito Salena, I put the story up for free. It's a Washington Post story. It is a very detailed, long read, and it really puts you into the heart of why people feel the way they do. This isn't just a steel mill. This is the first steel mill. This is the granddaddy of them all. That was an 86-year-old hot rolling mill that I spent the day watching work and watching the men and women work around it. And these workers who would traditionally be born Democrats, right? In Western PA, you're usually born Catholic and Democrat. It just like goes together. They are the perfect example of how the coalitions in American politics have dramatically changed. And now that the Republican Party or the conservative populist party is now the party that embraces the working man and woman. And so they're very happy, and they're willing to take a bite out of their 401ks if it means that this will be better for the future generations. And that's the way these union guys talk. Like a lot of those union workers that you'll meet in the story, they're towards the end of their career, right? They're in their 50s. They said, this isn't about me. This is about the guy that just started at the plant 2 weeks ago. Guys before me did this and took sacrifices, and I'm to pay it forward and make sure that they are able to retire when they turn 60.
Salena, one of the real challenges, and we played a cut from Trump talking about this, is investment and business management, building a factory, those sorts of things take years. In other words, as you just laid out, it's taken a couple of generations for all of these jobs to dry up. This is not something where a light switch got
Right.
flipped and things changed. What is the trajectory of changing this culture that we created where the jobs don't exist? How long does it take? And to be fair, is this anything that one president can do, or do we have to string together a lot of presidents that see this as an issue in order to reverse what's happened?
So I'm so glad you asked that. Last week, I reported out a story. There was the tallest smokestack in the country was blasted and fell. It was very traumatic. It was very sad for a coal-fired power plant. 10 days later, because this site is shovel ready, they announced they've already started to turn this plant into a natural gas plant to facilitate not just the electricity in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and parts of New York. It's going to be the largest electric power plant in the country. It is also going to power a data center, an AI data center. There are going to be 10,000 new jobs. And it is a $10 billion investment. And that's not even before the AI data center is built. You know, Bergman was there. I was at a fracking site, a fracking well, and he said, look, our job right now is to build, build, build. It's more than drill, 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 because this is like the arms race. AI is like the arms race, and we have to win in this country. And he pointed to the fact that there are places like that coal-fired power plant in Homer City all over the industrial Midwest that are ready and capable to be built. So I think that is where the new construction, the new jobs, and these aren't just working class jobs. These aren't just welders. These aren't just artisans that work with their hands. There are geologists there, chemists, engineers, men and women with degrees in AI and technology. So it is a broad reconstruction of how the American economy and how the American worker approaches the next generation.
It's fascinating, Salena. You know, you're giving us this other perspective than what you'd get if you were to flip on CNBC. It's the sky is falling, and yet if you
Right.
go into some of these places like you have, where people have seen what happens with the offshoring of American jobs and deindustrialization of certain industries, uh, they're excited about the future. I just wonder, you know, what you think the hopes are and the plans are in these areas. If Trump is able to continue on this path, what does that start to look like? What towns are affected? What industries do you think can boom?
Well, energy is at the top of the list, but also artificial intelligence, right? Those are the two big booms. If energy is going well, then that means farming is going well because, energy and farming go really hand in hand together. And I think one of the big things as part of these tariffs is to give a boost to our American farmer and rancher. So those are industries you see right then and there. And then we can talk about our universities, right? Our universities will have a bit of a turnaround in what they focus on. You know, maybe it's not you send your kid off for French literature. You know, maybe they go to school for things that are going to recreate these communities. The footprint is already there in places like Indiana, Pennsylvania, or West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, or Claysville, Pennsylvania, and all across, and not just in Pennsylvania. It's in Ohio, it's in Michigan, it's in Wisconsin. These places are already there, and these universities already have sort of the grain to begin these kinds of new degrees that young people can go for, but also the trades. Like you guys, I'm sure you've talked or listened to Mike Rowe. You know, the trades are also where we're going to see a growth and jobs that create real prosperity, where people can live in the same hometown that their parents grew up in if they want to, right? And that generational investment in a community, that's worth more than money in a lot of ways.
Salena, how optimistic are you? We hear a lot of, hey, everything is burning down, the world's on fire. Based on what you have seen and the reporting that you have done, how would you assess your overall optimism?
I think the optimism is great. I straddle two very different worlds. When I step on social media, I see a very different attitude in the world than what I see and feel and hear out here in the middle of the country. And it's always remarkable to me. And it's sort of like when I said to President Trump in 2016 when I was covering him, I said, voters take you seriously, but they don't take you literally. And my profession takes everything you say literally and not so seriously. And it's that same sort of dichotomy, right? It's very different in the middle of the country, and in particular among young people. You see all these protests out there, and they got a lot of play on social media and the national news. However, I would argue American politics is all about addition. If you go to any of these rallies, try to find someone that's changed their mind. You likely can't, because they're the same people that voted for who lost last November. So they're not adding anything new. And I think that's the challenge right now for anything that is against what President Trump and the Republicans are trying to accomplish. I was 4 feet away from President Trump in Butler in July 13th of last year. In fact, I have a book coming out about it. But one thing I can tell you in the day after I talked to him and the days after I talked to him, he had this fundamental understanding that there was a reason that he did not die that day, because there's so many reasons why he shouldn't have survived what happened. But because of that, he will be forever changed and feels this urgency to do something because he was given that moment to be saved.
Salena
Zito. Yeah, great work as always. Thanks for your piece, The Washington Post, and everything you do to cover this. And up at clayandbuck.com, guys, we've got her op-ed linked there. If you just want to go and grab it quickly, give it a read, you absolutely should. Salena, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Oh, sounds great. Thanks so much, guys.
Does great work, and we'll have some fun. A lot of great talkbacks. We'll play them for you when we come back to close out the Tuesday edition of the program. But a lot of you out there, NHL fans, NBA fans, Major League Baseball fans, Florida Gators, NCAA champions, as we have talked about during the course of the show a couple of times. But what sport do you love? The Masters coming up this weekend. I know a lot of you are golfers out there. Prize Picks give you an opportunity to play along with whatever your sport is. You just pick more or less on all your favorite athletes and see whether or not you can have some fun and cash in. You get $50 when you play $5. You can play in Florida. You can play in California. You can play in Texas, Georgia. If you're feeling left out, 40 states, 13 million people playing. You can get your money out in as quick as 15 minutes. That's a big difference compared to a lot of places out there. And you can deposit with MasterCard, Visa, Discover, quick and easy. Download the app today. My name, Clay, is the code. $50 instantly after you play $5. All you have to do is get hooked up with Prize Picks. Download the app, prizepicks.com. Use my name, Clay, for $50. Have some fun. The Masters, the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, whatever your sport is, whatever your team is, you can find the athletes available on the app. PrizePicks.com, code Clay.